Now I just need one more section for this page and we're done. I'm just going to create a section for background colors and text colors. So add one more section on the page here at the bottom. We shall call it colors and give it that style guide utility class with the 40 padding at the top and the bottom. And then it's repetitive, but it's, I think, good to show how I'm being consistent here with containers and sections. So this is the colors container, and it has my max width, which sometimes I search by max, sometimes by 1140. But it's redundant, but at least we're not using inline styling on new elements every time, because that's how you get confused once you start to build out multiple pages. So later it's very easy to see if you clone this looking within each element these utility classes that are being applied. All right, so let's give it that same H2 heading at the top, named colors. And we'll align it in the middle and make sure it's using our H2. And so now I'm going to use another container in this because I'm going to have, you'll see these like 4 color blocks that are basically squares that show our color. And I want them showing across the page, and we're going to use Flex for that. That'll be in the resources as well, but it's just a built-in CSS way to make things align and space themselves pretty automatically using a couple of classes. So it's almost like when you look at a landing page on a website, there's features, there's like 4 blocks or 3 blocks going across. It's probably using Flex. It might be using Grid, but we're going to use Flex for this here and Grid for some stuff later in the course. So below this heading, but in the same container, put a new container. And we're going to call it color blocks because it will contain our color blocks. And for styling, I want to use some built-in classes that are going to make these blocks go across the container. So the first one is flex row. Then you'll see how they space out later without manually putting margins or padding against them. I want another flex element or flex class here called flex space between center. And if you're not familiar with these, I'll explain it a little bit at the end once the blocks are built. So let's do that. So to create these squares, I'm just going to use containers, which is, a div, and I'm going to give them fixed height, a fixed width, and then a background color. So it's going to look like a colored square. I'm going to create 4 of those that I'm going to use throughout the site. So the first one will be what I'm going to call primary color. And I am going to create a new utility class for it to make it that fixed square, because I'm going to do this 4 times, so I don't want to do that inline 4 times. I'll call it square div, and I'm going to do 50 pixels by 50 pixels. So when I'm looking for this later, and if I forgot what I named it, hopefully I'll search the right things to find it. And yeah, this is simply a height of 50 and a width of 50. And then we'll give it some color. So I'll create a class called primary color again, so it's easy to find later. And And I have to look on my other screen what the code was that I'm using for it is. And that background color that I want to use is a hex code of 007CC7. It doesn't look like a square, but it should. So I'll figure out what's wrong there later and then fix it. But let's just keep marching along here. So now I've got this background color container and I want to create 3 more. So all I'm going to do is duplicate them and then give them each a different color. So I'm simply clicking this duplicate button and now I have 4 of them. So one thing I want to do, just going back to this container so it lines up with my headings, is do that same inline padding of 40 pixels. Great. So now let's just create the 3 other colors. So I just went ahead and created the other 3 colors. My secondary color, which is a darker blue, and then what I'm calling a success color and a warning color. So we'll use the red one in a couple of places, like if there's an error, and for a delete button we use on the admin lessons page, and then the success color for when someone submits their email to the waitlist getting a success message. That's nice and green. So last thing we'll do is just create some text colors and then we're done with the style guide. So I'll add in one final container here. Whoops, I missed. We'll call that text colors. And then we're going to do the same flex approach with flex row. And I think I did space between flex start. And then I'm just going to go ahead and put some, here, I'll do one. I'm going to use an element we haven't used yet, which is called a text box, which is pretty self-explanatory. And this is going to be my text box primary text color. And so I'll create another utility class, primary text color, because we're going to use this a lot in the app. And then instead of background color, now it's color for font, and then it's the same lighter blue that we used in that previous background. Okay, so I will finish these out, clean them up, try to figure out why those squares don't look like squares, and that's the end of the style guide. And so we're going to start to move pretty quickly through building the functional stuff now that we have these styles that we can just use as classes. Okay, so I went and just finished the style guide. I'll just quickly go through what I did. I duplicated that primary color square, and then for each of the rest of them gave them their own primary color classes, or sorry, their own color classes named secondary color, success color, and warning color. So we'll use those later for things like when a user signs up for the wait list, you get a nice green success message, or hopefully not get an error message, but that's where we'll use the red, as well as in a delete button in the admin lessons page that we're going to use and build out pretty soon. And then just some text colors. So for example, this primary text color has its own primary text color class. So that one and the secondary one are the same shades of blue using. And then I used an element, a pre-built element that I hadn't pulled in yet, which is just a link, but I gave it also that same primary text color class. So that's the style guide. Let's move on to the next lesson.